Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by one of Australia's top-ranked triathletes. She's been competing in competitions around the world since 2007, has represented her country at the Olympics already, and even has a world title to her name after being part of the winning Australian team in Hamburg in 2017. Thank you for joining me today, Ash Gentle.
Thanks for having me.
Let's go straight back to the beginning because I believe, even though you're now a triathlete, you played a lot of different sports when you grew up. What sort of role did sport play in your childhood?
Yeah, I played a pretty big role in my childhood. I think that, I kind of tried a lot of different sports from a very young age. I was the middle child with two brothers either side. So they were really into their cricket and football and soccer. So I remember going to some of their soccer games and playing cricket on the driveway and trying to catch big bombs they'd put up with a football. So I was kind of always roped into what they were doing, but I kind of found my way in some team sports in netball and touch football, and yeah, really loved them and played them from a really young age. And netball, I gave away that one first and tried to hold on to touch football as long as I could, but I discovered triathlon not long after.
Now, obviously, triathlon, there's a lot of different facets involved in it. I mean, did you have a preference as a kid growing up? Was it the swimming? Was it the running? Was it the cycling? What kind of drew your attention first, and then you kind of went, I can apply that well in triathlon?
Yeah, so I did a lot of running through school, but just cross country athletics, and kind of just threw myself into all the events that I could in athletics, and really loved cross country. So I trained a couple times a week with Brian Chapman, who is a pretty well known coach for a lot of juniors actually on the Gold Coast and in Brisbane. So I was, yeah, kind of just running and doing a lot of the school sports, states and nationals. And I guess a family friend recommended I go to Jenny Alcorn, who was a triathlon coach on the Gold Coast, and she still is. And I guess I went along to her running session just to run. But then I guess they were swimming and cycling as well. So I was about 14 at the time, and I kind of felt like, well, I want to try those other two sports as well. So I guess swimming, I was taking that up quite late in Australian terms, 14, but I really loved it, and I loved cycling. I hadn't ridden a road bike before, but growing up, I'd always had a little bit of a mountain bike and ride around with my friends. So yeah, just had to pick them up, and yeah, got hooked pretty quickly.
Once you got hooked, what was the sort of commitment when you're at, say, age 14, 15, like you're talking about, of trying to create this path of becoming a professional triathlete? How many hours were you training a week? How many days a week were you training?
Oh, I have no idea how many hours I was training. I wouldn't have even kept a record, to be honest. But I guess for me, it was just about fun at first, and I guess it still is. But I was training, just around school. I never really felt like I was training too much when I first started. And Jenny was really great at that too, kind of nurturing younger athletes. And I guess I started swimming once I kind of picked up swimming a bit better with Jenny. I started swimming with Raylene Ryan and eventually Dennis Cottrell at Miami. But it was mainly just around school. But I guess I fell into it pretty quickly, and I gained momentum pretty quickly because I made, the state team and national team, and ended up qualifying for my first junior worlds when I was only 16. So the progression was pretty quick at the start. And yeah, I definitely wasn't training too many hours while I was in school, but obviously had the ability to kind of pick it up a bit more once I finished school.
Have you always had quite a competitive edge? Obviously, in such an individual and a physically demanding sport like triathlon, there's got to be that sort of will to win there. And was that something that you feel like you always had growing up?
I don't know. I feel as though that it's probably a good question to ask someone looking from the outside, because I guess people would probably describe me as competitive, and I guess I liked winning things and trying my best, and especially say cross country and athletics, when I first started those two sports, it was very individual and very, it was very different to, the netball and touch football I was playing as team sports. But yeah, I think that I was always pretty competitive and loved just going out there and just, running as fast as I could with probably zero tactics and no idea exactly what I was doing, but I always had a great time.
You mentioned those sort of first Junior World Championships when you were 16. I believe that was in Hamburg in 2007. Was that the first real big competition that you'd gone overseas to compete in at that stage?
Yeah, definitely. I'd never been to Europe before. I'd hardly traveled. So yeah, it was a massive experience for me. I absolutely loved it. I have such fond memories from that time in my life. Those first few years of juniors was so amazing. I was still obviously in grade 11 at that point, so we didn't have the ability to travel and go to Europe too much early in advance like the rest of the team, but I was able to go there, and yeah, it kind of just blew me away. And Hamburg, it's one of the ones on the circuit now which attracts the most amount of crowd and spectators. So I had probably the best first junior worlds I could have imagined.
And what was it like going over there? Obviously, I think people kind of underestimate how big the triathlon scene here is in Australia. But in terms of comparing it to the rest of the world, did it just feel like another level up?
Uh, I don't know. I feel like we were pretty well like sheltered before the event, and we kind of just came in pretty late as juniors. And I think some of the things were a little bit overwhelming because it wasn't just the first time kind of competing internationally. It was the first time going to Europe, the first time being, we were just juniors, but first time being, I guess, in the same room and interacting with some of the senior stars. So there was a lot of new things about it, but yeah, it was pretty spectacular. I still remember after I raced, we watched the female elite women and climbing up on light posts to try and see over the crowd of people. Everyone, especially in Hamburg, Germany, the triathlon scene is absolutely huge. So it was so great to be part of that and experience what triathlon meant. And I think I still didn't know if I could make it as a profession. I still really had no idea, but I was like, wow, this is pretty cool.
I was reading something, I think it was on one of the Olympic websites or something, that in 2007, sort of that same stage, you were also still doing a few track events. I think there was a 3,000 metre race you might have placed first in Sydney.
Yeah, that was the Australian Youth Olympics. Yeah, in 2007. So I guess I still was running a bit of track, and I always kind of loved that. I don't really feel like it was ever. I don't know. I just always enjoyed it, and I've always just enjoyed running. So I kind of just went wherever it took me, and that was a really great experience as well. Being so young and being in an environment like that, and being able to compete against some other, really great athletes.
Well, obviously, it kind of was working out really well for you in triathlon because you got silver in both those sort of first two junior worlds in Hamburg and then in Vancouver the following year. And then obviously that big moment came in Budapest when you finally took out the title. How important was that to you? Because I've read a few things that was kind of the moment that you figured, okay, I'm really going to take this professionally now. I can pursue triathlon as a proper career.
Yeah, I do think that in hindsight, I do think that was the turning point for me. It's hard to say if I definitely thought that or had the confidence to think that as a junior athlete. But yeah, definitely in hindsight, I think I can recognize that was definitely when I knew. I had definitely progressed, had a bit of an off year like 2009 coming out of school, but still like absolutely loved what I was doing, and started to kind of, find my feet, and, winning that junior world title was really special. And I'll definitely always have fond memories going to Budapest and winning that gold medal, and just being exposed, I guess, more and more each year to the senior athletes on the team. I really think that helped my development and made me recognize that, that's something that I wanted to do as well.
At that stage, even though you're training with the wider team but competing as part of the juniors, how much of a squad is it in terms of competing as a national team, even though in certain aspects it's still quite an individual sport?
Yeah, I guess, I had the ability to train with a few of the other Australians that year because I had finished school and I had the ability to, travel a little bit more and have a bit more freedom in that regard. So I think that we had a really great setup in where I felt like we could really train with a few different athletes in the team. And then, race day came and yeah, it's all about, I guess, yourself and performing for yourself. But I think gradually triathlon is becoming a bit more of a team sport with the introduction of mixed team relay, which I'm sure we'll get to, but that's a really, really great event to kind of bring athletes together and make them really feel part of the team. But, world championships are always really special. We used to just have, from 2009 onwards, it's been the World Triathlon Series where the grand final is just you're not crowned world champion necessarily. You have to earn points during the year. But I still think it definitely still feels like the pinnacle world championship event and still a world championship. So Australia does a great job there in bringing the whole team together. And I feel like we've always got pretty good camaraderie and I've always felt like we've come together pretty well as a team.
Obviously, the big sort of tournament, or I guess tournament's not the right word, but I guess competition around the world is this ITU World Cup or the World Series, and the World Triathlon Series. You kind of made your start in 2010, and can you kind of explain how big that series is to people maybe in Australia who might not kind of be aware of how big the triathlon scene is?
Yeah, so I guess the World Series circuit is basically, it can consist of let's around about 8 events in the year, and it's really really similar to surfing. I think it's pretty much the same where you go to different locations around the world and I guess you gather points and there's a World Series leader board, and basically your best, I think it's around your best 5 results count plus the grand final, which is worth 1.5 points. So yeah, the grand final can really shake things up at the end of the year. And then after that grand final world championship event, I guess your world championship ranking is determined. And yeah, it's a I guess the pinnacle of what we do each year as ITU athlete, and then obviously every 4 years we have an Olympics, but people really put a lot of effort into making sure they follow the circuit the best they can and collect those points so they can try and be crowned world champion at the end of the year.
There are a lot of sports that talk about the sort of 4 year cycle, I guess, for their chosen sport, that it's all about reaching your peak as the Olympics come around every 4 years. But for triathlon, is there a sense that because there are so many competitions throughout every single year that you don't have to necessarily focus just on the Olympics, that you can focus all year round every year?
Yeah, I definitely feel like the Olympics is still the most, the pinnacle event of what we do. But I do feel like, you know, people are definitely chasing those world championship titles every year. It's definitely what everyone's trying to achieve each year. But it'd probably be an interesting question for someone maybe who has multiple world titles but not an Olympic gold. Maybe ask them which one they would prefer. But I have a feeling that the Olympics is still that one step up, that people really want to perform. I guess it's only once every 4 years, 5 years if it's Tokyo. So it's definitely really special. And I think most athletes hold it pretty close to the heart.
After you finish school, you're focusing on some of these World Cups and World Series. What are the demands like for you then in terms of competing and training, and how regularly are you having to travel overseas for events?
Yeah, so I'd say the most I traveled to follow the series was probably in 2017. A little bit before that, I started, I think, 2011 on the World Series circuit. The London test event was my first World Series. And I think that I mainly stayed a little bit more at home than some other athletes. So I tried to base myself in Australia as much as I could and then go to Europe for like a 3 month period. So I didn't always have the maximum amount of races to count for my World Championship series, but I guess in 2017 I had joined a squad which pretty much moved around the world with the series. So it was definitely very easy at that point to be based in Spain and then travel to all the European World Series events. And there's some in America, but it's definitely more European centric. So, you know, being an Australian, obviously it's pretty hard to be able to travel back and forth to Europe for those individual events. So generally Australians always base themselves somewhere in Europe to make life a little bit easier to travel to those events. So it can be quite demanding, and you're on the road for a long time. And generally, a lot of Australian athletes spend a significant time away from Australia. But for the ease of travel and to try and do the racing that we have available, it's definitely easier to be over there.
Where's your favourite city in the world that you've been based out of? Do you have a favourite that you go, that was a good time? That was where I really felt I made a lot of progression as an athlete.
So I've mainly only been two places that Triathlon Australia have kind of set up as like a European base. One was in France in Aix-les-Bains, which was absolutely beautiful, stunning scenery. And I was there quite a few times when I was a bit younger. And that's where I guess I was exposed to a lot of these athletes that I'm talking about, that I saw them train and I saw what they did. So I think being there was a great experience for me personally. But then I spent a few years, different, varying amount of times. Sometimes I was only there for a month or two. And then in 2017 to 18, I was there for many months in Vitoria-Gasteiz in Spain, in the Basque country. So it's really great training there. Cycling is amazing and really safe. And I always felt like that was a great place to train out of. So I, always really enjoyed there and had a little good group for a couple of those years.
I guess the big thing to talk about is involvement in like these large Australian teams, obviously with the Olympics coming up. And I guess your first real experience that would have been 2014 Commonwealth Games, being involved there. What were your memories of sort of that experience, and I guess being in this large Australian contingent?
Yeah, I don't really know. I feel like I met a few new people in Glasgow, just being in that big squad. But I'd say that I was probably pretty shy. So I don't think I was someone who was too comfortable just being able to go up to someone and introduce myself. I'd probably think I was an athlete who kind of just stepped back and was just admiring different athletes on my team and thought it was a whole pretty cool experience. But I think over the years I've got better and kind of come out of my shell a little bit more and been more confident to try and, I guess, mingle with the whole of Australian team. But sometimes it's hard too. In Rio, we were the very last day. So we went to the village, but then actually left early to go out to Copacabana Beach where our event was. So, and we were very last day. So we had to stay pretty focused. So we unfortunately got to see no other events and couldn't really be very social at all. So that was a tiny bit unfortunate, but it is what it is. You're there to compete. But I think that I always feel like there's, great camaraderie around the whole team. And I really had a great experience at Gold Coast Commonwealth Games, actually. And I think that was great too, because it was a home Commonwealth Games for me. And we started, I think we were one of the first days, and then we had the mixed relay. And then I stayed there for 2 weeks and supported the rest of the Australian team and went to absolutely every event I could possibly go to. So that one was definitely a great one.
With the Olympics in Rio, just talk me through about how you found out you were selected, because it was on the back of a string of really impressive results, and you kind of talked about before how the Olympics has always been the pinnacle. What was it like when you found out, or you got that call saying you're on the plane, you're going to Rio?
Yeah, pretty special, obviously. It's I can't, to be completely honest, I can't say that I actually remember getting the phone call. I remember getting the phone call in 2012 saying I wasn't in the team. So I probably should remember the ones where I said that gave me the thumbs up. But it was pretty awesome though. Like you said, I had my first two World Series races. I got a silver medal. So I kind of thought, what else can I do? Like I could have won 2 gold, but that would have been really impressive. I think that I did the best that I could and to put my best foot forward. So yeah, I was really happy with those results and yeah, really pleased to get the call up.
Were the Olympics something you always had fond memories of looking back to your childhood? Was it sort of an event that you'd always try and watch on the TV, you'd always be around the opening ceremony for?
I can't really say so, but I definitely remember Kathy Freeman winning the gold medal in the 400. I'm pretty sure like anyone that was born in the 90s or late 80s as a young kid remembers that moment. I remember that moment as if it was yesterday. And that's always really stuck in my mind. And in 2008, I think I was um, really started to like watch a lot more triathlon because I had been to a couple of world championships as a junior. And I remember sitting in my lecture theatre in school, they opens it up for me at lunchtime to watch the women race, where Emma Moffat and Emma Snowsall, Moffy won the bronze and Snowy won the gold, and that was incredible. I remember that very, very well as well. But I can't say I really before Kathy Freeman and then that 2008 experience, I don't really have super clear memories of the Olympics.
Being able to watch people like Moffat, Snowsill that you mentioned, and then sort of gradually go up the triathlon pathway to eventually, I guess, becoming familiar with them and knowing them and competing against them, that must have been quite a surreal experience for someone who, I guess, you, as you said, watched them on TV competing to win a gold medal.
Yeah, it was great. And they were always very approachable. They weren't scary at all. So it was definitely great for me. I definitely trained quite a lot with Emma Moffat. So got to know her really well. And even yeah, leading up to the 2012 London Olympics where I was performing pretty well and consistently as like a young athlete on the circuit. But I knew I wasn't ready for an Olympic Games by any means in 212, but I was there in London watching it, and I was able to do quite a lot of training with Moffy in the lead up to that event. So yeah, being exposed to that and kind of seeing how she operated, and with those girls, they were always so open and honest, and yeah, I was able to pretty much see what the best in the world did. So I think I was very fortunate.
How do you look back on your performance at Rio? I guess obviously the position you finished wouldn't have been what you wanted going over there, but in a sense, your results since have kind of been incredible. And do you kind of look at that as a learning moment as a result?
Yeah, definitely. I think my first Olympics in Rio, I feel like I look back and just think that it was very overwhelming. I think that I stayed on track as best as I could, but, even in the lead up, both of my bags and bike went missing. And then my bike turned up completely broken, and I missed the first course familiarization because I still didn't have my bike, and it was like a bit of a nightmare, to be completely honest. And I remember borrowing Jess Trengrove's running shoes because I didn't have my shoes. I don't know, I feel like I didn't have anything, but it is what it is, and those things happen, and you can only learn from that. And I think that regardless of that, I feel like um, I was just, yeah, disappointed in my result. I I was in a group on the bike and we just lost too much time, and I didn't run to my full capacity. I just feel like, yeah, definitely learned a lot from the whole experience and also the race itself. And I think that, yeah, I definitely tried to, once I let myself be upset about it for a while, I definitely got back on the horse and had some dramatic changes in my training. And yeah, definitely had, yeah, probably my best year in 2017 after the Olympics.
You say you were upset for a while. Are you the sort of person who, when you have a result like that, you kind of want to go back and watch it a few times to see what went wrong? Or are you really focused on just sort of leaving it behind and just going, no, I know what I did wrong. I don't need to look at it again. I'm on to the next race.
I definitely didn't watch that race again. No, I did not. And I probably won't. But I think that I'm probably in a position now where I'd definitely be able to sit down and watch it. But at that stage of my career and probably my psychological and mental development, it probably wasn't good for me to do that. So I feel like I've changed a lot physically and mentally as an athlete since that experience. So I think that I'm in a position to deal with things a lot better now. But no, I haven't rewatched that race.
As you said, 2017 probably a pinnacle of your career to date. I mean, you finished, I think, second overall in the World Triathlon Series. You've got winner of the Montreal race. You've got the mixed relay World Championships. Is there anything you can kind of pinpoint in that year? Is it something changed, or did you just feel that everything was finally coming together?
I feel like it was a year where I had a massive change of stimulus in my training, and I think that I was pushed a lot in training and worked really hard. And I was based in Spain for quite a long time to be able to like do those races. And yeah, had definitely had a few breakthroughs on the circuit. Finally getting my first win after quite a lot of silver medals. So it was definitely a breakthrough year in that sense. But yeah, I definitely feel like it wore me down quite a bit. It was pretty tough to recover from that year. I think that I just it was great, but I definitely pushed my body and my mind to the limit. So I definitely had a few up and down results in 218, but I was glad I was able to finish it off really well with that win on the Gold Coast in 218, which is probably a career highlight, my career highlight.
Did you have many friends and family come up to the Gold Coast? Well, wouldn't have to travel, I guess, too far to the Gold Coast, but to come and watch you at the Com Games in 2018?
Uh, yeah, I did actually. And I think that so we were really lucky in 218. So we had the Commonwealth Games in April, but then we had the World Championship grand final at the end of the year. And I feel as though the Commonwealth Games for triathlon, um, we had it kind of exposed people more of like, this is what triathlon is. There's an individual event, there's a mixed relay, and there was tons of crowd. But I couldn't get over how many people were there at the end of the year for the grand final. That was like mind blowing. And I feel like on the circuit, when Gold Coast was on the circuit for a few years, and I think 215, 216, it was, to be completely honest, it was probably the worst crowd attendance in the whole series. But I think the Commonwealth Games was really great for the sport in Australia to kind of show people at a major games, like, this is what we do. This is what it looks like. Triathlon's always free. You can just go out in the street and watch it, which is always a plus, unless you want to go on the grandstand. And yeah, so I think that, I had personally a lot of family and friends there, and then they could also come back for that grand final in September. So it was just a really great year for triathlon in Australia, and particularly a lot of athletes living in Queensland.
You've talked about, I guess, the mixed relay a couple of times. Obviously, won the gold in that at the Com Games. Do you think that has been part of the reason why there's been kind of a renewed interest, that it's this new unique aspect of the sport that people can really get behind? And I guess, why do you love being a part of it so much?
Yeah, I love being part of a mixed relay. I think it brings out the best in a lot of athletes. I feel like there's more pressure, so I don't want to let anyone down, and a lot can happen in a mixed relay. And for anyone that that doesn't know, it's two women and two men, and the women start, do a whole mini triathlon, tag a man, woman, man, and it's around like 20 minutes a leg. So it's super fast and furious, and the things, how it can change, I think really what captivates people. And I think that, I think they looked at it just to create something different. And it's also great when we get to race with our teammates. It's always been, like we've said, very individual. So to be able to team up with people on our team, and also like the men as well, to be able to race with them, I think it's really awesome.
Do you think it's something that we'll start seeing, I guess, in more Olympic sports? I mean, we're already seeing it in swimming, that they're going to be introducing a mixed relay aspect. Do you think it's kind of something that is a way to reinvigorize a lot of different sports?
Yeah, it could be. I think that It's not so much, well, it's pretty unique being able to race with the men. I think that's a really great aspect of it. But I think also for triathlon, it's about the intensity of it, because generally we're an individual sport, and Olympic distance for women is about 2 hours, men hour 45, hour 50. So to be able to see like a full triathlon done in about 20 minutes, the transitions are really important. Everything's just super intense. And to be able to see that 4 times over and see how the teams, change, and it's also really tactical. So I think people really love to watch it. And everyone that I know of that have always loved triathlon have really embraced the introduction of the mixed relay.
Have you had a favourite event that you've been involved in to date? I mean, obviously, there's the special one in Alcatraz that is quite a remarkable one when you see it broadcast, but is there one that sticks out in your mind?
Oh, I don't know. I think in terms of uniqueness, Alcatraz is definitely up there. That is like out of this world, jumping off a boat into San Francisco Bay. You literally have no idea where you're going. I'm definitely going to do that race again, because every time I just jump in, the tide just takes me in. The whole time I'm swimming, I don't see anyone. I'm completely lost. It's just crazy. And I finally see the bridge and know I'm not being swept out completely. And it's just so unique to be able to do that. And yeah, San Francisco is a pretty cool place, and to be able to have that race there is, yeah, really unique. And I'm really glad that I've had the opportunity to do that race a few times now.
Before I touch on the upcoming Olympics, one thing I want to chat to you about is your stranglehold over the Noosa triathlon. It's a pretty special record you've got going up there. Is it really special to have such a strong record at what is essentially one of your home triathlons?
Yeah, I absolutely love it. If you were to ask me my favorite ever triathlon, I hands down Noosa every time. The experiences I've had there over the years have just been incredible. And I feel like it's a second home for me now. And I just love racing there so much. And yeah, I was so disappointed that it wasn't on last year, when we'd seen a few events happen very safely, but it is what it was. And I'm just so eager to get back out there at the end of this year. And I've actually planned my wedding around it. So that's how important it is. The triathlon was already kind of like
It was locked
set.
in.
You,
Yep.
you always know it's at the start of November, the end of October. So we knew the weekend. So then the wedding kind of fit in a few weeks after that. So
So looking forward to, I guess, Tokyo 2021 now. I mean, you would have been really ramping up your preparation for last year. A lot of competitions in the lead up. I mean, 2019 you won in Mooloolaba, and sort of you would have felt in good form. When did you find out that the triathlon, or not just the triathlon, the Olympics, sorry, they were going to be postponed a year?
pretty much found out when everyone else did. Yeah, it was pretty shocking, but also very expected. Well, I expected it. I kind of, at the end, I was kind of just like, can you please just make a call now? It was more like just the kind of knowing, but also the uncertainty was more unsettling, because it's really hard when everything on the calendar was just getting pushed back and cancelled, but then there was still deliberating about the Olympics, and everyone kind of knew that it would have been impossible. So yeah, obviously really disheartening, but to be honest, I wasn't shocked when the announcement came through.
Did it make it a little bit easier, I guess, having already been to Olympics? Do you think it might have been a bit harder if it was, say, your first Olympics and it was pushed down the track a little bit else? And were there other members of the, I guess, in and around the Australian team who haven't been to Olympics that it maybe hit a little bit harder?
It's hard to answer, because I think that no matter how many Olympics that you've been to, or none at all, I think that it's a pretty hard pill to swallow, really, because everyone's been, waiting, and you always expect to be 4 years. Like no one could have ever imagined a pandemic happening. Like out of this world that it even happened. So I think that, it's unfortunate to a lot of up and coming athletes that were like really eager to try and make their Olympic berth. But it's also for a lot of us who have been in the sport a really long time. We're all getting older, and we're all, really want to make sure that, you're timing everything right to make the team in the first place. And a lot of athletes too, that maybe were just holding on to try and make Tokyo and maybe have since retired. Like, I find that pretty upsetting that they had to kind of call it quits because it got delayed. But I think that everyone accepted it. There was no way that you can do anything about it. So I guess individually you just have to deal with it as best as you can.
I mean, what did 2020 look like for you instead then? Were you sort of someone who was like, all right, I'm going to take a chance to have a bit of a break, have a bit of downtime that I haven't had in 10, 15 years, or did you go, no, this is a chance to really focus hard on my training and work harder than I ever have?
So a bit of both, but in a way, I first thought was I'm going to have a break. It got pushed back and pushed back our season, and I feel as though that I was pretty realistic from the start once I was figuring out the severity of coronavirus. And um, I, my fiance have a house here in Brisbane that we finished building in 2018. So we had some projects that we'd been putting off. So we got in the garden and I turned into a landscaper for a while, and it was very hard work. So I'm kind of glad when that was over, but I did forget about triathlon in a sense for a while, just because it was kind of easier to deal with then, just to be able to focus on something super different, mixing cement, hauling rocks and shoveling stuff. So it was pretty hard, but that was a lot of fun. And once I did get back into training, I did focus a lot on what I was doing, but it wasn't so much, massive hours or really high intensity training. I actually took that back, scaled that right back, and did a lot of stuff on my technique, and basically all the things that you don't have the energy to do a lot of when you're in really high intensity training or you're doing massive hours. So for me, I was like, well, let's take this opportunity when there's going to be hardly any racing to focus technically on swim, especially once the pool's opened, run and bike. And I think that that's kind of paying dividends now when I start to get back into my normal program with more hours and more intensity. I had essentially a whole year to work on the basics, and I really took it back to the fundamentals that you need to have to be a good triathlete. And yeah, I'm really happy that I did that, and also happy that I kind of had the courage to do that, because sometimes it's pretty easy just to think you need to do more and train super hard, but sometimes it's even harder to take a step back and you need to just relax a little bit, not burn yourself out. And basically that's what I did, knowing that 2021 was probably going to be a pretty huge year.
Was it hard not being able to have as many international competitions to compete in and travel as freely as normal, or did you kind of like having Australia as your base for a little bit longer than you might normally have?
Yeah, I definitely enjoyed it, to be completely honest. I didn't like seeing the triathlon world come to a halt by any means. I didn't enjoy everything that I saw with coronavirus. Like, that was quite distressing, obviously. But personally, in my own little bubble, staying at home was really refreshing. We've mentioned, I've been traveling overseas since I was 16, different lengths of time, obviously. But once I got out of school, I was always away from my partner, who I've been with for a really long time, for months on end. I kind of didn't ever really feel like I had a home anywhere. I always could come back to my parents' house, and that would feel safe, and I would love being at home, and I'd see my friends and my family. But to be able to be settled in one place for so long was actually super refreshing for me. And I kind of needed that after just a bit of a turbulent couple of years leading into 2020.
What's the schedule looking like now for you in terms of preparing for Tokyo 2021? Can you talk me through, I guess, the final qualification process and where you're placed for that?
So basically, in December last year, I got a call from my HP director, and he told me that I had been nominated by the selection committee for the team. So yeah, obviously we didn't have any ITU events last year after Mooloolaba. So uh, he assured me it was kind of like winning a selection event. So, but our qualification period doesn't end until June. So I guess it's not official and not signed off by the AOC um, by then. So I can't officially say that I am selected, but it's really great to know that the Australian Selection Committee have nominated me, and I guess I just have to wait until the qualification period in June until I can officially say that. But it's still just so great to be able to know that I just need to focus on Tokyo, and there's no pressure to be in any sort of form before that.
I guess looking at Tokyo, it's going to be a very different Olympics than what you experienced at Rio and then what a lot of other athletes have ever experienced. I mean, let's look at some of the things. And first and foremost, with the event, there's going to be no international fans, and no one can cheer, they can clap, they can't make any noises from out of their mouths. What's that going to be like as a competitor? I guess having less people there to watching you and a bit less of a vocal crowd.
I guess it will be a bit strange because I guess we're pretty lucky in triathlon. We go to a lot of the World Series events are in big cities. So even if someone strolls down the street and they know nothing about triathlon, like a crowd forms somewhat. So I guess it will be a little bit strange, to be honest. But I guess like in the heat of the competition, I don't think it's really going to affect anything at all for our triathlon, but it's going to be obviously a very different experience. And even just what we have to do as athletes, like staying very isolated apart from when we go out to training. But I guess like if we I'm just trying to find out as much as I can before the event and practice and simulate a few things. So I'm not completely shocked and blown away when I get there and kind of panicking about it. It's just, you've just got to accept that nothing about it is going to be easy, and nothing about it is going to be what it used to.
Have
Used to
you
be.
have you received any details, or have you seen much from the test events and things like that about what the course for Tokyo 2021 is going to look like? And are you excited by it?
Yeah, so we did the test event in 2019. We actually, though, only did a 5K run. It's supposed to be 10, but it got cut in half because of the heat. So it is going to be very hot, but I hope that we get to be able to do the whole event in the actual Olympics. But we saw obviously the majority of the course because we swam the normal course, biked the normal course, and did one lap or 2 laps of what will be, I think, a 4 lap run. So we definitely got to scope it out really well. And yeah, it's pretty intense. The water is super hot, to be honest. You know, the conditions in Tokyo at that time of year are really testing, and it's humid, but I don't know, I feel like we have some sort of advantage coming from Australia. Everyone does heat prep, obviously, no matter where you're from in the world, everyone's prepared and ready for it. But as a Queenslander, I'm kind of like, I can really just trying to embrace it. And yeah, the bike course is tough, and yeah, I guess it will be pretty tough on the run once you get out there on the streets of Tokyo, just battling the elements really.
I mean, we saw that the marathon location was moved a little bit for Tokyo because of the conditions. Were you surprised that maybe more wasn't taken into account for something like triathlon?
Yeah, I don't know. I never really expected it to, but I thought maybe they would consider. We've raced in Yokohama many times, but that's obviously in May, so a lot earlier. But I did think, well, that's a great plan B at least if things need to get changed. I'm like, hopefully they're not going to. Please don't change the distance of the run. Hopefully they'd change the venue before they did that. So yeah, I don't know. I've got zero say in anything that happens like that. So to be honest, I generally just not worry about it and wait till I get told what's happening.
And how do you feel about heading over to Tokyo? Do you have any concerns about everything going on in the world, or do you feel confident in all the sort of measures that have been put in place?
Yeah, I feel as though they'll have really great measures put in place. It would be great to be able to get the vaccine beforehand, but like, I don't think that I'll be able to, because I'm not a healthcare worker, obviously, or I don't have a condition that would put me on the list any higher. So, uh, yeah, if it rolls out faster than expected, I'll be happily have a vaccine before I have to go over there. But I'm sure, you know, I'll personally be as safe as I can. My hands can't possibly get washed any more than they have in that previous lockdown. So I think we're all aware of what we have to do, and it's just got to accept that it's going to be pretty lonely, to be honest, just trying to isolate yourself from everyone else.
The whole fly in, fly out thing, how do you feel about that as well? I guess it's going to be, I think, 5 days before competition, athletes are going to be flying in, and then 2 days after, they're going to be heading out here. I mean, you spoke about how at Rio you didn't really get to enjoy many of the other events, and do you think it's going to be a lot similar?
I know, it's like, oh my God, maybe I should go on to Paris so I can have this amazing experience. Yeah, I don't know. It's like, it is really sad, but of course I'm grateful that it's happening. So it's a bit catch 22. You don't want to be an athlete that sits there and complains that you can't go out and cheer your athletes and have parties and, you know, enjoy the event after you've, you know, isolated and competed and been so focused. But, you know, I think that there's so many other events around the world where we have the ability to, you know, support fellow athletes and, you know, cheer on our fellow Australians, but just can't be at the Tokyo Olympics. And it is a little bit sad, but it is what it is. And I think that most of us will, yeah, definitely accept that. So at least it can happen.
I think I saw the women's triathlon is on the 27th, which is exactly 5 days before the opening ceremony. So fingers crossed, as if everything goes to plan, you'll still be able to get to the opening ceremony.
Yeah, maybe. I wouldn't like my chances. I feel as though I feel as though we're just gonna have to go there and like be in our little bubble and not go near anyone else or anything else. So I think I don't know exactly what it's gonna look like, but I'm not holding on to hope that we'll be at the opening ceremony.
I guess a couple last questions just before we finish up, more generally on your time in the sport. I mean, obviously we've spoken about sort of the dedication of training and things like that, and the sort of amount of time you've had to put in across the 14 years, I guess, you've been competing around the world. On those mornings when it gets really tough or the weather's miserable and you don't want to get out of bed, what motivates you to get up and go, no, I've got to train today. I've got to make sure I do this.
I think that it started just because like I just loved it, and I'm actually like a fan of the sport. It's something that, you know, I'll stay active for the rest of my life, and triathlon has given me so much, being able to travel and meet the people I've met. So it definitely started just from a love of it, and it's still that way. But I think for now, at the moment, it's also because I just really want to see what I can do with no regrets. Definitely some major competitions in Rio. I just say to myself, and I've said to myself numerous times before Tokyo, I just want to go to Tokyo, and yeah, of course, I want to win a medal, but my main goal is to walk away from the Games knowing that I did absolutely everything that I could to be the best prepared that I could. So I guess when you're not feeling motivated, I kind of think of that. I don't want to be regretful when I walk away, and whether I come first, mid pack or last, I want to know that I did everything. So I think that that's definitely helped me in the last few years to always keep on track and do what I need to do.
What would it mean to win an Olympic medal?
Oh, I don't know. It's just like crazy. It would mean everything. I think that it's what we all dream of, and it would mean the world to me. Lots of people have invested in me, and I've always, I guess, believed in me when I haven't believed in myself. And I think that that's all. That also motivates me. Yes, I'm doing it for myself, but I also like to think the people that are always helping me day in day out be the best athlete and the best person that I can be. And I think that if I was to win a gold medal, I think that, yeah, I'd have a lot of people to thank.
And to finish off, What would you say the proudest moment of your career to date is?
Um, oh, results wise or just
It could be any. It
generally?
could be out something you've achieved outside of the sport, but I guess just something that you go. That's what I'm most proudest, or I'm the most proud of achieving so far.
Probably, I'd probably have to say when I won on the Gold Coast at the Grand Final World Championships. I hadn't had the best race like 3 weeks before in Canada, and it'd been like a bit of an up and down year, but I just kind of thought I just said, this is my world champs. Like, I can't be world champs. I think I was ranked ninth or something. Mathematically, it was impossible. But, well, I was like, but I can still do the best I can and pretend this is a world champs. And uh, yeah, to win that was just, yeah, pretty mind blowing. And like I said, I had so many family and friends there. And I think to share that with them as well, um, I won my first World Series event in Montreal, and I overcame a lot of sickness to win that. And that was definitely a breakthrough. But I think to be able to share it with so many people on the Gold Coast, and also after a time where I was like, like didn't really believe in myself fully, I think I was able to turn it around. I think I'll definitely always remember that one.
Well, while friends and family won't be able to be there in Tokyo, I'm sure you'll be able to channel that energy and channel those similar sort of feelings into hopefully your performance there in the Olympics this year. Ashleigh, thank you so much for chatting with me today. We wish you all the best for your preparation in the next few months, and can't wait to see you compete over in Japan.
No worries. Thanks so much for having me.